Namaste, and thank you all so much for being here today to celebrate Earth Day with Hindu Students Council and to learn about our initiative, Project Bhudevi. My name is Shekhar Sharma, and I'm serving on the Executive Board of Hindu Students Council, and am a co-chair of the Chapter Relations team. I, along with Sohini Sirkar, Chairwoman of Hindu Students Council, will be moderating today's discussion. Project Bhudevi is a community-based environmental program led by Hindu Students Council to implement on campuses and in local communities. Through cleanup efforts and the promotion of sustainable practices, this project aims to raise environmental awareness and help conserve our Prithvi, or Earth. Today, we are going to hear from our guest speakers, Sevak Dev Singh ji from the Chinmaya Vedanta Heritage Center in Toronto, Arushi Ramaka, co-founder of Project Bhudevi, and Kush Gohil, co-founder of Project Bhudevi. For those of you who are new to Hindu Students Council, I wanted to give you a little information about the organization behind this initiative. HSC is an international forum providing opportunities for college students and young professionals to learn about Hindu heritage through various activities, events, and projects. HSC was formed in 1990 by college students who saw a need for Hindu representation on campuses. With over 30 chapters in North America and several HSC-inspired chapters around the world, HSC is one of the largest Hindu youth organizations outside of India. HSC is a registered nonprofit in the United States. I'll now hand it over to my co-moderator, Sohini ji.
Thank you so much, Shekharji. We will now be introducing our first guest speaker, Sevak Dev Singh. Born in Canada, Devji was exposed to spirituality from a young age through Balavihar and Satsanga. After completing a BBA at the University of Toronto and working for several years as a chartered accountant and certified internal auditor, he developed a strong interest in life of service and was at the time reintroduced to Chinmaya mission through Chinmaya Yuva Kendra. Happy to meet many like-minded people, Devji eagerly became an active member, expressing a strong thirst for knowledge. Under the guidance of various mentors and local acharya, Swamini Shivapriyananda, Devji approached Swami Tejamayananda about joining a Vedanta course. He joined the second residential Vedanta course in Trinidad and Tobago in 2013 under the tutelage of Swami Prakashananda. Having studied Sanskrit and Vedanta for almost 2 years, Devji decided to make his primary aim serving the ashram in Toronto, Canada, where he is currently posted with his wife, Sevak Jina Singh. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We look forward to hearing from you. And for those of you in the audience, please feel free to ask questions in the chat, and we will hopefully get to them after his talk. Namaste and Hari Om.
Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Shri Saraswatyai Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahmavidvaram. Okay, Hari Om and warm welcome to all those listening wherever you might be. And a special Hari Om to the HSC executive team and Sohini ji and Shekhar ji who have organized this wonderful Bhu project. So Shekhar ji reached out to me to talk about the dharmic view of ecology. And I have been tasked today to share some thoughts from our scriptures and then leave 15-20 minutes for questions. Now, the idea of how dharma and what we call as environmentalism and ecology come together, when it comes to Hinduism, is starkly different than what you might imagine. It is not matching what is there as the popular environmental movement in its paradigm or in its solutions. So what do you mean by that? Specifically, when you ask how dharma and ecology are related, you'd have to conclude ecology vai dharma. That ecology is nothing but dharma, and dharma vai ecology. Dharma means nothing but what we would call in English is ecology. They're one and the same thing. It means to say that the protection of Bhudevi, Dharati Mata, the protection of earth, is intrinsically part of Sanatana Dharma. That means to say, a Sanatani means a Hindu, if you want to say. A Sanatani need not start a separate movement or separate organization to bring ecology into what it means to be a Hindu. Rather, just being a literate Hindu, a well-read Hindu, you will naturally be protecting the environment. So this is the first point I want to share. Now, the solution that all environmental organizations are taking up these days is one of improving environmental literacy. This very Bhu project in our introduction was meant to do that. And the hope is that if we increase the environmental literacy and awareness, that creates a power for change. Correct or not? So this is the whole modus operandi for environmentalism. And improving environmental literacy boils down to affecting a paradigm shift, creating a paradigm shift for individuals. Much further than now I know, like to remove obesity, it's more than just slapping on a warning label and putting all the ingredients on the back. Has that removed obesity? So giving more information alone is not the solution. Rather, changing the very relationship one has with food, that will change behavior for generations to come. Correct or not? So this is what we mean by literacy. Now, the problem of the lack of understanding about our environment and the way to live with the environment, I propose, has two causes. I'm talking in general, right? Worldwide. And I'm providing these thoughts for you to chew on and see if they make sense or not. One is the fundamental world view is one that is antithetical to environmentalism. That means to say, specifically, the idea that this world is here for us to loot, plunder, or the world was made for us to enjoy, that type of idea doesn't bode well for the environment. Further, the idea that we should protect the environment so as to protect ourselves, that also has a smell of selfishness in it. Because it means to say, the moment I cannot see the connection between how saving this tree is going to save my life, well, I'm not motivated to save the tree again. This is the kind of paradigm we are entering. Many people are entering environmentalism with. This is the kind of paradigm that is handed down to us in the modern education here in Ontario. I grew up here. This is the kind of thing I heard. And as part of this worldview, we do not see a clear connection between the causes that are of environmental damage and destruction and all that, and the effects. They are, when scientists try and connect for us how the new piece of technology we bought, or our food choices, or our recreational choices is the cause for some flood on the other side of the earth, we feel that connection is abstract and it is too delayed in time for us to make it meaningful. So all of this forms a worldview that is opposed to making environmental change. Then, the second reason is that, well, the age-old problem of what we call in Sanskrit as durgunas, the age-old problem of desire, greed, anger, kama, lobha, krodha, these things. And specifically, what we observe in today's world is that politics, economics, and human greed have teamed up and have made a tremendously powerful union or alliance. And surreptitiously protect these durganas in our heart. So now we have this two-pronged problem to solve through environmental literacy. Now, how are you going to do that? That seems like a difficult task, isn't it? In fact, great saints and sages have said this environmental problem is the most intractable problem that human species has ever faced. We've not faced such a big problem like this before. Now, I am very proud to say that Sanatana Dharma or Hinduism has the solutions to these problems. Sanatana Dharma is the need of the era. Because, first of all, it has within it the worldview or Vishwa Drishti that intrinsically and inherently allows one to think, live, feel such that you protect the earth. And this we'll discuss a little bit, a few of the points in that in the time that we have, right? It is what is called sometimes as a Deshi tradition, a grassroots tradition of the earth. And it is more akin to the traditions of the Aboriginal people, if you have studied that or you have visited them, far more akin to that than that of the Abrahamic traditions. It is a tradition born of nature, part of nature, and cannot at any point be antithetical to nature. As you understand, people understand the Aboriginal traditions to be. They understand, well, I shouldn't speak about it. I don't know so much, but from what little bit I know, they understand a spirit behind the wind, and that their life was made out of and meant to be part of nature and this type of thing. So your tradition is much more like that. You may not have known that, but that is the truth. And therefore, since the vision is like that, then the actions and attitudes that follow, they also follow that. So sharing this type of, now the thing that our Sanatana Dharma has is a long, ancient tradition of being able to explain, educate, and transform people to coming to see the truths about our interconnectedness. Not only do we have a Deshi tradition, but we have a way to explain it, a long tried and tested method to let others come to enjoy that understanding. Further than that, we also have all the practical means to prepare one to come to that understanding or practice that understanding on their practice those behaviors that allows one to finally come to that understanding. Specifically, no tradition I have ever encountered deals with the durgunas, the negative, undesirable qualities of the heart, more than Sanatana Dharma. And because of that treatment, not only does it prepare one for such what we call mukti and understanding of the oneness of all things, but it is the same removal of negative qualities that's going to save the earth. Because as I said in the beginning, that is half of the problem: human greed. Now, putting it in positive language, that means to say that when you get down to brass tacks, saving the planet is going to boil down to the opposite of human greed, which is what? Reduced consumption. If you have to put in a slogan manner, the Hindu way of life with respect to the environment, it will be simple living and high thinking. So let us reflect for a moment about the paradigm or Vishwadrishti of Hinduism. From the highest point of view, the Upanishadic teaching captured there in Bhagavad Gita, avibhaktam cha bhuteshu vibhaktam iva cha sthitam bhuta bhartri cha tatnyeyam grasishnu prabhavishnu cha. And it means to say, in loose, simple translation, that it is true that when we interact and feel the attitude we have and what we see in this world is that everything is broken up and separate, right? The rivers are over there, the trees are over there, my neighbor is over there, and we're all unconnected and distinct and separate. Everything is broken up. But really speaking, at the root of things, there is a oneness if you want to say interconnectedness, intimate interconnectedness, so much so that there's no difference between all things. And that teaching is revealed and to the person who studies it through that whole sampradaya. And finally, the implication is a person feels no separateness between them and other beings. No gap in existence is there. As a result, no harm can be done to any part of nature. This type of understanding is the great gift that the Rishi tradition has to offer the world, and it results in the individual who understands it being free and happy, and spontaneously also being in connection and harmony with the whole universe. So that type of teaching now is enshrined and passed on through so many other ideas and words and practices. So stepping down from that, what we hear is that Earth is our mother. Bhumata. In fact, that word mother is used for cows, Gomata, and rivers, Ganga Maya, throughout our tradition. So if someone has to understand why Hindus will look at the world as mother, first thing to do is understand what I just told, that Upanishadic teaching. Means to say, if we want to approach that understanding, the first thing we need to do is involve in our understanding of the rest of the world, the relationship of closeness. And there's no relationship like mother and child. The mother nourishes, protects, sacrifices, lives for the child. That is the epitome, if you want to say. And when we extend that relationship, a few things happen in the heart. First thing, it removes that difficulty of connecting the cause to the effect. Because just the thought that this has a chance of hurting my mother or that who sacrifices for me makes me sensitive. You do not need to sit me down and give me a long report to show me how the butterfly effect is going to connect my choice of glass over plastic to some tsunami. Knowing that the whole universe is sacrificing for me, I feel that I owe my life to the protection of the universe. Like that, this type of thing. So the heart also becomes involved. So the first element that is brought in there also is reverence. And in all our studies of anything, be it nature, environment, the first thing that is always brought there, any other science, is reverence. This also brings to us the idea of why we would choose to have less consumption. For the same reason that we don't want to, our life anyway is to live to protect that Bhudevi who lives for our nourishment. So we have lift, and there's no tradition that does this, lifts the status of what people consider the inanimate world to an animate being on whom, because of whom we live, in whom we live, off of, for whom we live, and that is nature. That is our relationship. Otherwise, you're left with predicaments, which everybody can summarize and knows very well. You know the story of the man who killed the golden goose to get one more egg. Seeking to loot and plunder bodes only for destruction. Then, one more point I want to share you from the paradigm. Again, having its roots in the Upanishadic teaching, we will hear that this, from our scriptures, that the earth should be understood as an extension of our body. It's not that I'm here and the earth is there. This is Hindu thought. It means to say, Vasudha eva kutumbakam. In Sanskrit, they say the world, Vasudha, is certainly one family, one unit. So when they say world there, they just don't mean people. It means everything that you can perceive. So that includes air, and that includes, we know, we've perceived at some point that in your stomach, in my stomach, there's like 1 trillion bacteria, right? So from the smallest bacteria to the different elements in this, on this planet, all of it is one cohesive family, like one unit, one body, one organism, like that. This is the Hindu thought. Extending that a little bit, because you'll see, if we don't have all those little bacteria inside doing their job, we won't be able to digest our food. And if we don't have the trillions of bacteria in a little sample of soil, then the leaves and organic matter cannot be dissolved, and that can produce more food and fruit and vegetables. So when you think like this, you find that, half of my lungs are outside, because I breathe out and nature breathes in, and then it breathes out the oxygen and I breathe that in. So half of my body is outside when it comes to the lungs. All my organs, they purify the food that I take in and put out the excrement, and I extract what I need. And from that excrement, now nature does another purification job and brings me back pristine, nutritious food to eat again. So half of my organs are outside and half are inside. You might say, this is my body, and it is made of what I have eaten. It has nothing to do with the world. But my future body is hanging on the trees and is sitting under the ground, because this body only became this size because of aloo and chana and rice and dal and all of that. Correct or not? So my future body is hanging off that tree. The world is like an extension of my body. The rest of my body is outside. After this one, decays and all of that. So we mean it quite literally to be understood that this whole universe is me, myself. The implication being, just like I would not purposefully drop a hammer on my toe, I would never think of hurting nature. So environmental literacy means imbibing what it means to be a Sanatani, and then the actions therefore follow. Finally, I share this word bhu and bhumi, because of the Bhu project. Bhumi comes from the root bhu, to exist or to manifest. And our Acharya demonstrated a little science example for us when we were at the ashram. And that is, he put inside a pot of soil a tulsi seed and a pepper seed, the hottest pepper you can find in the West Indies there, that scorpion pepper, in the same pot. And after some time, with the same soil and the same sun and the same water, from that seed, which is a little packet of intelligence, grew a sweet smelling, medicinally good for you tulsi plant. And then also it produced a pepper that you can't even touch with gloves, from the same neutral soil and water and earth. Means to say that that little packet of intelligence has the power to manifest something using all the same elements. And where are you going to find a seed, a tulsi seed in the universe? Where are you going to find a scorpion pepper seed in the universe, if not here on Bhudevi? So Bhumi is that being which contains with it that infinite number of possibilities and is constantly manifested you and I here in this moment. So such reverence and deep thinking is what inspires us to protect the planet for the future. And it goes directly against the paradigms I listed in the beginning. And it really bodes well for an environmental movement that has the teeth to face today's problems. So with this, I'll pause and open it up for questions.
Thank you so much, Devji. I think in the interest of time, since we have a speaker with some constraints, we'll have our next two speakers, and then we'll go to questions at the end, if that's fine with you.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for that talk. That was really interesting. I really enjoyed, especially the concept of having like our bodies are kind of a part of the entire universe, like quite literally. So thank you for sharing that with us. I will now bring back my co-moderator to introduce the next speaker, and then we will be coming back to you, Devji, afterwards. And a quick note to those of you in the audience, please feel free to ask questions in the chat, and we will try to get to as many questions as possible. Thank you again.
I would like to again thank you, Devji, for that enlightening talk. Next, we will hear from Arushi Ramaka, who in high school founded Project Bhudevi along with members of the high school leadership board. She was the founder and president of HSC in Montgomery High School chapter and is now a student at UNC Chapel Hill and VP of Education and Advocacy on the Executive Board of Hindu Students Council.
Namaste, everyone. Thank you for having me. And Devji, that was a really, really enlightening talk. And I feel like as a student growing up in America, hearing environmental advocacy talk about from a Hindu perspective is really, really nice. Shohan, if you don't mind bringing up, yes, awesome. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about HSC's humble attempt to do some seva to Mother Earth of Project Bhudevi, which is students in high school who wanted to do their part in combining their devotion to the goddess with seva to society. So in Hindu Dharma, we have this beautiful sloka called Samudra Vasane Devi Padvatastana Mandale Vishnupati Namastubhyam Padasparsham Shamashvame, which is part of some of the slokas that you are apparently supposed to say as soon as you wake up and before you put your foot on the floor. Because usually we don't put our feet anywhere near God. But even though Earth is a goddess, we walk on her all the time. So this essentially kind of says that Mother Earth is the holy body of the goddess, and may we take her, her allowance to step on her. And if we had to take an allowance just to step on her, imagine how much we had to respect nature and how badly we're kind of failing at that as a society. So according to the Puranas and the Trimurti, Bhumi Devi is the incarnation of Lakshmi and the third avatar of incarnation of Lakshmi that's associated with the third avatar of Vishnu. And when we're taking care of the planet, we're kind of paying our respects to everything Bhudevi has given us, because we would not be here if not for Bhudevi, because she is the goddess that's living around us. And in our society, we're constantly moving, constantly. I just came back, from an exam, and then we're going to go work in jobs, and we're going to be in this infrastructure that's very modern. But sometimes you have to take a step back and realize, are we doing our part to respect our connection to nature, and are we becoming too distanced from it? So basically, the core things we do are cleanup efforts and promotion of sustainable practices. This is also a great way for Hindu Students Council students to partner with other Hindu Students Council groups and other non-Hindu organizations to kind of demonstrate to larger American society what's the importance of Hindu culture in American society and how can it have a genuine, tangible, good impact on the world. So here are some examples of how to participate in Project Bhudevi. It's a great way to encourage volunteering. Through HSC, you can build community through these. You can very easily, partner with local organizations. So I hope you guys take this idea, and every time Earth Day comes around, if you have a small group of Hindu students, a bhakti club, or you want to start an HSC, please, please, please do this to provide some seva. And some examples of our wonderful students who've done this across America. If we can just say a simple mantra to Bhudevi. Om Vasundharaya Vidmahe Bhutadatraya Dhimahi Tano Bhumi Prachodayat. So this is the Gayatri mantra, which pays respect to Bhudevi and says, may she illuminate our mind. May our thoughts be guided by her. May our thoughts be guided with good intent towards the earth.
Thank you, Arushi, for such a great, for first of all starting such a great and sharing with us this great information about Project Bhudevi. I have a couple of questions for you. The first question is, like, what is your vision for Project Bhudevi? Like, what would success look like for you for this initiative?
So I remember when, of course, it's not just me, a humongous, a group of students who evolved this idea, and then Kush afterwards will talk. But my vision was essentially when I was sitting in AP Environmental Science in high school, that AP's ES teacher is actually the advisor now for the HSC there. I realized that a lot of the newer environmental research is kind of like trying to untangle Western concepts from conservation that were kind of going the other way. And a lot of the newer concepts about like stability and balance and equilibrium sounded a lot like Hindu concepts. It's a lot really drawing on indigenous spiritualities and what is Hindu Dharma if not the indigenous spirituality of Bharat. And I thought we have all these sessions in HSC about philosophy and we're talking here, right? But why don't we put that philosophy into action? And that's really why I thought of this a couple of years ago.
Thank you. Another question we have is, what are some challenges you faced as a youth leader and working on this project?
I wouldn't exactly say there were anything quote unquote negatives per se, but challenges I guess would be I guess sometimes people have an image of what a religious club should be. Or I feel like when people think about seva, they think like seva at the temple per se. And I feel like making people realize that wait, this is not philosophy is not just something where you're distancing, from the physical world. It's how can you look beyond like the illusion of like modernity around you and realize that what you grew up with, those values, you can apply it in a way that everyone, non-Hindu and Hindu, can see what you're growing up with. And HSC should be a vehicle for seva. So I feel like that's just like kind of a mindset change. Of course, we've always been doing seva, but sometimes in the motions of running our chapters, we get into the holy nights, the Diwali nights, and the garbas, and the small trivia nights we're supposed to do socially, and we forget, wait, we can go partner with other organizations. They don't have to be Hindu, but we can retain our Hindu values and say, hey, we're inspired by these things, and this is how we can contribute to American society because we're here too.
Okay, thank you. Can I pass it on to Sohiniji?
All right, Arushi, thanks so much for being here. I had one last question for you. Can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you? I know you talked about it a bit before, but what inspired you really to like start Project Bhudevi? When did you start it? And like, what was the team that you had worked with initially when you first started the project?
So actually, there's a specific picture in our AP Environmental Science slides where they showed the picture of flooding in India, and the water reached so high that Shiva's murti was submerged. And I couldn't help but think that there's so much, like when we were talking about contributions of different immigrant groups or different cultures to American activism, we were a little left out, and maybe we weren't doing enough in the environmental sector, as obviously, even though our dharma is so rooted in nature, upholding the world also means nature. So I feel like just the intense sadness as a bhakta of just seeing like the murti submerged along with so many people. It was kind of an emotional thing, but I obviously went back to the HSLB at that time, and we all thought, let's start this. We got together a couple planning calls, did all of those humongous documents where we get super excited and put down a bunch of ideas, and we got a couple high school chapters to start. I think my chapter didn't do a cleanup, but we did do a food drive. And then, of course, there's in the recent times we've seen humongous events at some other chapters. So hopefully we keep this running and we can also make sure Hindus put our contributions on this specific field.
Thank you so much, Arushi. Just to reiterate, this initiative was started by Arushi, who was a high school student at the time, as well as a bunch of other high school students. So it really shows you that, with Hindu Students Council, like even if you're just in high school, you can make an impact on the world around you. So definitely excited to see more initiatives coming from the young students, including Mission Bindi, which was also started by a high school student for World Bindi Day. And we are looking for more students to apply for the HSLB, which is the High School Leadership Board. So if you're interested in that, you can join by going to Hindu Students Council and clicking join our team. And so we want to thank you, Arushi, for being here today. I know you have to run off. You're a very busy student. So I will go ahead and say thank you to you. And I'll now invite Kush Gohil, who is one of the other co-founders of Project Bhudevi, to join us now. So Kush is currently was the philanthropy chair at Loyola Chicago HSO, and he now serves as the Hindu Students Council regional coordinator for the Midwest region. So thank you so much for being here today. And I wanted to ask you a couple of questions as well. So first, to start out with kind of what started you in terms of like getting involved with Project Bhudevi, and what's inspired you to join this, and just you actually contributed a huge amount in the last couple of years, starting all different events in different locations. So yeah, what's your inspiration?
I will start off by saying again, Arushi is the main idea person when it came to this. So the fact that a high school student was able to formulate this type of initiative that's being seen on a national scale, I think is really commendable. On my end, what really appealed to me was the fact that this initiative is coming on the heels and, in many ways in the midst of the COVID pandemic. And that was a time when I know for myself and many other people, we were cooped up indoors. We felt deprived from all these social bonds, social relationships. You felt in many ways suffocated. And what appealed to me about Project Bhudevi was that it's the exact antithesis of that. You're embracing life, you're embracing the world around you. And something that personally interested me in addition to that was the idea of the universal experience of the fact that we all live underneath the same atmosphere. We all drink water. We all breathe oxygen given to us by the plants around us. So the fact that this was a universal experience, a universal treasure in many ways, that we have a planet that we can celebrate and in many ways take advantage of, unfortunately. And so I thought that being a part of an initiative to give back to the Mother Earth that has given us so much is something that was really inspiring. And whatever 2 ounces of things I could do, I wanted to contribute those 2 ounces.
Thanks so much for doing that. What are some examples of Project Bhudevi events that you've heard about happening in the past or participated in yourself in the past few years?
Yeah, so for those that don't have any context of what Project Bhudevi is, you saw a lot of pictures in that previous presentation. those are from all around the country, all around the world. Project Bhudevi is appropriately a global initiative. I know, for example, in California, they have beach cleanups. In even places like Hawaii, we had a couple of students, you may know them, Shoani, who helped clean a park in Hawaii. And, throughout the country, we had these different initiatives. I know from my end, 2022 onwards, we have had an annual Project Bhudevi in the Chicagoland area. And the first one in 2022 was a beach cleanup near Loyola campus. There's actually a beach right near the campus, quick walk. And so we had an initial event where people kind of met each other. And let me emphasize, it's not just Hindus, it's not just Indians, it's people of all walks of life. We had Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, Sikhs, everybody of all walks of life came to essentially celebrate our Mother Earth. And so that first event was a beach cleanup, and we had some really great attendance, which was happy. I felt really good seeing that. We were walking around with our garbage bags, and then eventually, people with their family saw us and they were asking, they're like, "What the heck are you guys doing?" And when we mentioned that it's a beach cleanup, we're helping clean Mother Earth, we had people who weren't even students, who weren't even part of the initial event itself join on actually after the fact. So at the end of the day, we had, I think, maybe like 40, 50 people contribute to that one event, which was awesome to see. Then the year after that, we had a event where we created bird feeders using recycled materials like milk jugs. And what we would do is essentially not just celebrate Mother Earth herself, but her creations. And so we would be using essentially an evil that we put in the world, plastic, pollution, all these types of things, and finding new ways of giving back to the earth using that evil that we put out into the world. And then we do have some upcoming events, which I think I will talk about shortly.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, you kind of led right into the next question, which is, what are you doing to celebrate Project Bhudevi this year?
Yeah, so I do want to emphasize a pretty cool thing about our Project Bhudevi in the Midwest / Chicagoland area is that it's a collaboration between multiple universities. So the first two events were a collaboration between Loyola, UIC, and Northwestern. And so on top of an additional layer of celebrating Mother Earth and protecting her, we also have inter-organization cooperation. And essentially you're introducing multiple communities to each other. And that's something that I was also very proud of. For this year, it's yet another third annual collaboration between UIC and Loyola. And what we're doing this time is essentially using recycled materials again, plant pots. I almost had a tongue twister. Plant pots. And what we're doing is decorating them, planting the seeds, and then giving them to students. So no matter where you are, you have a little piece of Mother Earth with you, because students especially, we live in our apartments, we live in our little crowded dorms. So having that reminder that we're part of something greater just nearby, whatever part of the area that we live in, is, I think, something that the participants will really enjoy and love.
Awesome. That sounds really fun. And for people who are interested in potentially coming to that, how could they find out more information?
Yes, so we do have social media pages, hso.loyola. HSO is the Hindu student organization at Loyola, and they are the ones hosting this year's Project Bhudevi. So if you want any more details, please feel free to check out their page on Instagram. There's a flyer on there, hso.loyola.
Awesome. Thank you. So one last question for you. What challenges have you or the chapters faced in, getting some of these projects off and running? And how have you worked through addressing those challenges?
Yeah, so there's two main challenges. The first one is the initial communication of what Project Bhudevi is. And then the second part is the logistics aspect, which is a part of all events, but is especially true for Project Bhudevi. So the first thing, communication, is explaining, what is Project Bhudevi in the first place. And I will admit openly that Bhumi Devi is a form of Devi that I personally didn't have much experience or background knowledge or understanding of until I first learned of Project Bhudevi and did some research. And so there was plenty of other people who were in my same shoes. So initially getting that educational aspect out to the community so they understand who Bhumi Devi is, what she represents, why are we having a whole initiative to honor her. And that was a very big challenge initially, but I feel like with normalizing that information, we were able to overcome the challenge by making it more, not, I wouldn't say like a limited version of itself, but essentially everybody loves to celebrate Mother Earth. And so that was a great opening for us to kind of infuse these Hindu specific concepts. And for example, shlokas were something that we also gradually incorporated so that people would over time understand what exactly Project Bhudevi was all about. And the second challenge was logistics. So like I mentioned, ours was a collaboration between multiple schools. So getting everybody on calls with each other, getting board members introduced to each other was a challenge, let alone with our general body members. Finding a location where we could host the event was an initial challenge. Chicago is a city where there are a lot of laws, a lot of rules, and even for something beneficial like a beach cleanup, you need licensing, you need permissions, all these things. So those were painstakingly, I'll say, painstakingly researched. We emailed multiple sites. We did our due diligence to ensure that not only were we having this event, but we were having the best possible event, whether it be 2022, 2023, or this year, 2024.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kush ji, for being here today and also for all the work you've done with making Project Bhudevi a success every single year since its founding during COVID time. So thank you so much for being here today with us.
Thanks for having me.
And with that, I think we will go ahead and bring Devji back onto the screen to answer some questions that we actually got from our students ahead of time. So I wanted to start off with a question for you about what kind of Hindu practices do we have that celebrate Bhumi Devi, and what kind of values do those rituals and practices support?
So you will find, as I was mentioning, intrinsically throughout our tradition, a reverence for all things. And specifically throughout the day also, there are many different ways that we take out time to remember, reinforce that attitude I was speaking about earlier. So starting at the very beginning, when we get up in the morning and we chant that mantra that was put on screen earlier, Samudra Vasane Devi, Parvatasthana Mandale, Vishnupatni Namastubhyam, Padasparsham Kshamasvame. And you please please forgive me for putting my feet on you. O Devi, who's made of the mountains and the oceans, and who's Vishnupatni, Lakshmi Devi. So, like that, and then when we take a bath also, we remember all the rivers of Ganga. Then we have something called Bhumi Puja, which we do before taking up many great yajnas. Many other Govardhan pujas there, Aarti of Ganga Maya, invoking all the Devis before we do a puja in the Kalash. So many things, there's Devi Suktam and Bhu Suktam. So there's so many different things we have within our tradition to chant, to do, and in forms that we worship the Lord in the form of the earth. And for the modern generation, taking out time to pluck flowers and offer them to the earth, and to decorate the earth, and to chant in gratitude, and that type of activity, if you have not done it from childhood, it seems a little not natural. Although it is so natural, actually. And many Deshi traditions have different versions of that. So trying that out to see if it clicks with you is a wonderful thing, because it is a great way to inspire that devotion. But that is not all we have, right? Not by a long shot. If you're more the thinking and studying type, then studying clearly and about how I depend on nature is a wonderful and necessary exercise for everybody. And the completion of that is the imbibing the idea that I owe my life to nature because everything I have, had, and will have is provided by nature, or by Bhudevi. Then another way we have something called Pancha Mahayagna. Means in our day and in our life, we have to make 5 types of what you call, simple word is sacrifices. We have to participate in 5 types of giving back to the world, one of which is to nature. So to do it every day means to follow the motto, I produce more than I consume for nature. To keeping that motto in mind and doing whatever you're doing with that idea, I produce more than I consume, I give more than I take. If I'm living off of taking from nature, then the sacrifice nature is making so that I can live should be worth it. So I'm giving back more. And that is a big challenge in today's world because, as I said, just by living, we are taking more than we give. We're depleting nature. So it is truly Hindu, and it is so laudable to see this project, Project Bhumi, because it is really imbibing what the injunction is in Hinduism. But we have to go out and above normal day-to-day living to give more than we take. I should not leave this planet with less trees than I found it. And in my lifetime, if you're into that field, then you should do some study. How many, living in Southern Ontario, for instance, or in the Chicago area, a person in 1 year consumes how many trees? If you're in university, you can get together and bring the business team together and the environment team and come up with a number, do a study, right? And then figure out, okay, over my lifetime, how many trees will I plant? And like that, you can serve nature in your own way, whatever makes sense to you. So this is ways that we have, and it goes on and on. All of our traditions are also eco-friendly. We use only water and earth and leaves to worship nature. What type of values those support? Well, that's what I was saying. First, it builds reverence. It builds understanding, which leads to the removal of greed and selfish desire and anger, and promotes the opposite, contentment and selflessness. So that brings purity of heart and integration of the personality, strength of will. And finally, it brings understanding and wisdom. This type of thing can lead to that.
Thank you. I think you actually covered a lot of our questions in that one answer. So I guess from a very practical standpoint, in addition to kind of having the understanding of how to respect Matrabhumi, what would you say to our next generation of young Hindus and our high school students or college students, young adults, about having an ecological way of living? How do we promote that on a daily basis? And how do we encourage our next generation to be more conscious of our choices and engage other students in this? So, kind of on a very practical level.
Okay, so really speaking, to live ecologically means to live more simply, means with less, and more selflessly. The solutions being provided by modern scientists and economists are to generate alternative forms of transportation and Tesla batteries and alternative energy and all that type of thing, right? But one just has to scratch the surface to see that we are just changing one environmental problem with another environmental problem. When you study how much we have to mine the earth and destroy societies also to produce all the rare minerals to produce the batteries. and the net carbon footprint of a hybrid vehicle versus the other vehicle and all that type of thing. We're really not solving the problem with this. The pandemic proved that reduction in consumption will lead to a healthy planet. There's so many famous pictures of like deers running in the middle of the streets and all type of thing because we reduced our consumption. Now that I know is getting at the root of big problems, like because GDP depends on consumption. Our whole system is wired up that, you know, if for Canadian US GDP to be high, everybody has to be consuming. You have to buy another one, and then another one, and then another one. But that is not going to lead to our benefit. That is just short-sightedness. So daily, we have to confront the individual desire. You know, I don't want to use the same mug for 10 years. But if I buy another one, then I'm contributing to drawing resources from the same place. I don't want to use the same clothes for another 10 years. So confronting this issue directly is one way through your daily life you can save the planet. So that means you're reducing your selfish desires, and instead you spend all your time and energy giving something back. It is much more rewarding, and we need individuals who are inspired by the Vishwadrishti, the worldview of Hinduism, to act it out. So others can see that it is economically viable and enjoyable and more meaningful to live this way, right? So the whole idea that I'm coming with is change begins here, from within. Of course, you can try and convince bodies and organizations to change, but those bodies and organizations are made of individuals only. So finally, somebody has to change, and you have access to really only one heart. That means yours. So when you change, then the world changes. So these type of things, this is the true way to reduce our consumption and produce more than we consume. Now, as for the other question about the next generation, see, this can be answered very nicely. How did you're also a next generation, whoever is there. That means there was a generation prior to you. And you have picked up certain things from the past, good qualities and bad qualities. How did you pick them up? Did someone sit you down and give you a long lecture, and then suddenly you got inspired? And is that how it happened? Usually it gets passed down by seeing it lived, demonstrated. So if your parents or someone who you saw in life inspired you and did something, then automatically it gets passed on to you. So the previous generation, just living up to good values, passes down to the next generation those values. And that is why seeing high schoolers step up, they have in one stroke not only given back currently to the planet, but they've given back for years to come, because everybody who hears about it and sees it realizes, oh, it is possible. So by being the change you want to see in the world is the most powerful method. And in doing that, each individual has to be very clear, because someone will ask you one day why you live the way you do, why you do it. And at that point, you should be ready to explain. So studying it for yourself and putting it into your own words, thinking about the problem, that is an essential step also to teach the next generation. And if you're really inspired, then how they have a nice phrase? When your cup is full, it will naturally run over. So when you're inspired and doing, it will naturally spread to others. This is the way to, in a grassroots way, inspire a new generation, as I understand it.
Thank you so much for answering that question. And I know we're kind of running out of time, but there were 2 more questions from the students that I wanted to pose to you, and I'll just give them both at once. One is, what do our Shastras, and especially the Bhagavad Gita, say about our responsibility to respect the earth? And the other question is, how can we practice Hindu rituals in a more sustainable manner?
Okay. So with respect to Bhagavad Gita, there are so many verses that deal with those durgunas, kama, krodha, mada, lobha, right? So throughout Bhagavad Gita, you will find Trividam narakasyedam dvaram nashanamatmanaha kama, krodhas, tatha, lobha tasmad etat tyajit. A person should totally renounce these three: desire, anger, greed, selfish desires like that. Because they lead to suffering. So throughout Bhagavad Gita, and how to do it and all that is taught very powerfully through Bhagavad Gita. Then the higher knowledge is taught, avibhaktam vibhakteshu, that in and through all things, there is a fundamental unifying reality. That is also there. And then there's a wonderful phrase in Bhagavad Gita, parasparam bhavayantaha shreya paramavapsyatha, that by mutually worshipping each other, everybody will reach the highest good. This is a wonderful principle that is there that answers the question, how am I going to be successful if I'm not going to be ambitious and live in this dog-eat-dog world and take from the other guy, and I cannot live a utopian philosophy of consuming less, and the other guy is consuming more and he's going and getting ahead of me, like that. So we have our own understanding of how people reach great prosperity and abundance, and it is enshrined in this line, parasparam bhavayantaha, each person serving the welfare of the others. So that is something to be studied in Bhagavad Gita, and which one is more true? And suffice it to say that lasting prosperity comes from each person serving one another. You just have to study any successful organization. Now the basketball playoffs are going on, NBA playoffs, and they go on talking about those teams which are cohesive, which are deep bench, because they know that those teams are the ones that will succeed. Those are the strong teams. Those are the dynasties, like that. It is expressed everywhere. So these are some verses from Bhagavad Gita. Then the other question you asked was about...
Yeah, the question was about how to practice Hindu rituals in a more sustainable manner.
Right, more
in America.
That more sustainable way, I suspect that person is asking, thinking that, like on Shivratri, we pour milk down the drain. It falls onto Bhagavan, and then it leaves, and then not all that is consumed, right? Because besides things like that, there's no more sustainable tradition than Hinduism. Nothing more sustainable. It means if we want a mandir, we put a rock. And if we want to decorate that mandir, then we get sandalwood. Nature is used, right? Of course, because of marketing and sales, people now have turned that into consumerism, but it need not have all of that. It means you could pluck a leaf from a maple tree and do a nice puja for Bhudevi and all that, and you'd be perfectly fine. So I think people are concerned about those things. And to answer that type of thing, now, if you see, there's a few points in that. We look at that type of thing, like Shivratri, and we see excess, oh, look at all that excess. People say, oh, why didn't you just take all that milk and give it to a poor man who has no milk? Why give it to Bhagavan? Bhagavan doesn't need your milk? They ask like that. At the same time, while they're holding a Tim Hortons coffee or a Starbucks coffee and drink it, and then they criticize. Means to say that usually these questions are rigged. The person is a victim to hypocrisy. Because everyone knows the stated policy in every fast food and coffee chain is that any excess that is there at the end of the day has to be disposed of in the garbage. You cannot take all the extra donuts and coffee and milk and all that is there at the end of the day and give it to the homeless shelter. You can now and then in a small gift, and then you publicize it. But as a general rule, it has to be disposed of in the garbage, because that affects the profits. Everybody will just line up afterwards at the end of the day and take the things for free. So for the economic preservation of that company, by and large, in a massive way, all the people we buy from and interact with on a daily basis totally throwing away more than they need, and they're not giving it. But someone will take an expression from Hinduism where you're taking a moment out to take what you have received in abundance, and which we have. It's not like we have a limitation on milk. I mean, any coffee shop could give all the excess to, and we'd solve all the food problems right there. And so you take a moment when somebody is celebrating nature and remembering our oneness with nature and pledging to serve that nature and criticize that. But if you're going to do that, that's fine, but then you better be willing to criticize everything. So if you say, I will not come to Shivratri because of something like that, then you have to be willing to say, and I will also not drink any coffee from any coffee shop, and I'll not go to any bagel store, and I'll not buy a single donut, and I'll grow my own food. If you want to, then I think that's wonderful then, if you're living that type of life. So that type of protest needs to be seen within context of what actually is going on, right? And because you have great freedom in Hinduism, nobody's forced to do that type of thing. If you want on Shivratri day to, instead of offer on the lingam and go and give it, that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong in that. But you must understand the principle going on there is actually on that day, worshiping the Lord, which is manifested as this universe. So on that day, you take excess. You take the abundance that you have and you offer it to that universe who has given you an abundance as an expression of love. And that inspires you to live the rest of your life for that universe. So if one day you're offering a little extra milk, so the rest of your life you can be inspired, or the rest of the year, that's a good thing, actually. But it has to be seen in context, right? And it has to be, many people say these type of things from outside the tradition, and then from the inside the tradition, we hear it and we go on repeating without thinking properly. So I hope I didn't kick a hornet's nest by this type of answer.
No, I think that was great. No, and I think that these kinds of topics are ones that our Hindu students face, in terms of questions that they get from peers, and even people, young adults get this question. I'm sure you've heard this question many times. So I think this answer was really helpful to us, and I really appreciate you being here today and sharing your thoughts with us. I think all the viewers here are going to take away a lot from this, and I definitely learned a lot today as well. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for organizing this type of thing. It's a great pleasure to be regularly working with the Hindu Students Council.
Thank you so much. I will now invite Shekharji back onto the stage to close us out for the evening, and just invite all of our guests here again, and just want to say thank you all so much for being here. So Shekharji, go ahead.
Namaste, and thank you all so much for being here today to celebrate Earth Day with Hindu Students Council and to learn about Project Bhudevi. Please support Project Bhudevi and our other initiatives by donating at hindustudentscouncil.org/donate. This program, as well as all the things we do, are thanks to generous donations from supporters like you, as well as our team of dedicated volunteers. Thank you so much to our guest speakers for being here with us today. Thank you, Devji from the Chinmaya mission. Thank you, Arushi, and thank you, Kushji. Please like and subscribe to this video and follow us at Hindu Students Council on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. We look forward to connecting with you soon.